Hello, this time we're going to walk around one of the largest stone buildings ever built by Native Americans. It had over 600 rooms, and they started building it over 1,000 years ago. It's Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon, which is in a remote section of northwest New Mexico. And I shot it with one of my 360 VR cameras, which allows you to control where the camera points. You just click the screen or use the buttons on your smart TV remote to point the camera wherever you want to look. It even works when the video is paused. Go ahead, give it a try. It's about 2 hours from Albuquerque. The park road runs past each of the 6 great houses in Chaco. But you already know that if you've seen my 10 best ruin sites video. We're going to Pueblo Bonito, which is the biggest. It was built between 850 and 1150 AD. The parking lot was nearly empty at 9 a.m. in mid-June. The temperature was already in the mid-80s. Because we're at 6,200 feet above sea level, the sun is quite harsh. The parking lot is several hundred feet from the ruin. It only takes about 5 minutes to get there. You might want to just pan around to get used to using this new technology. The obvious question is, why was it built? Well, no one really knows for sure. Different groups and different tribes have different opinions. I asked the ranger in the visitor center and he told me that, well, the 6 great houses were likely public buildings. And most of the people who lived here likely lived in the surrounding valley in much smaller quarters. Tilt down to this little info sign and you'll see what they think it looked like back in the day. If you pan the camera to the left, you'll see that there is plenty of room in this valley. And back in the day, it was fertile enough to grow enough crops to feed them. Some Native Americans say that bad things happened here, and they don't really like to elaborate too much. It takes just a few minutes to walk here. It's an easy flat trail. There's a plaque that has a little historical information about the place. Some rangers were working on stabilizing some of the walls, and some of the areas were not accessible. But this little trail walks us around to the back, and you can stop and peer, by the way, using the VR technology and look into the rooms. So feel free to spin around and do that as much as you like. I do a little bit here myself, but now might be a good time to pause it and take a look around and look down. You can still see the wood structures, the wood beams. Those are original from the time they were built. This section was from the later period. This was not from 850. This is closer to 1100 or so, I believe. And look at all the windows. Some say they're not really windows. They're access panels or to store grain. Perhaps grain was stored in all of these. And all these big rocks here, well, that is from, it's fairly new. I think about 100 years ago or more, a piece of that cliff face broke off and fell on a good portion of Pueblo Bonito. Of course, these are huge pieces of sandstone. And they're remarkably big once you're there in person. And that cliff face, it's straight up. And there is a way to get to the top, and there's another, it's Pueblo Alto, I believe it's called, at the top. And it takes about a mile, mile and a half to get up there, but it was getting a little warm too quickly for me to try that one on this trip. And we're coming up to a little fork in the trail. And if we go, the little sign there tells us that there are petroglyphs if we take the trail to the right. But we're going to the left, to a little overlook, through the debris of the rockfall that happened in 1941. Apparently about 30,000 pounds, make that tons, 30,000 tons of sandstone fell off of that cliff. These ruins were discovered in the 1800s, before it fell. And there were people who excavated and treasure hunted. But they've made a nice little trail through the debris, through the rubble. I did look for some fossils in the sandstone, didn't find any. Now this is where you really need to practice your spinning around skills. This is Pueblo Bonito. You can see it's pretty big. And there are several great kivas, over a dozen. If you look in the distance, you can see also ruins of the other great houses. If you got really good eyes, you can see up on that cliff face on the opposite side, there's a stairway to the top. I'm going to have another video where we actually walk through the building. That one will be coming shortly if anybody watches this one. These videos, I tend to lose more subscribers than I gain when I put these out, so I'm very reluctant to put these things out there. They're not my traditional, very detailed, very comprehensive training guide or touring guides. But I think they're interesting, and some people have expressed that they really like them. And here's a place, look at that wall. You can see how it's tapered up to get lighter as it goes higher. This is another great place to scroll around, look at the detail in the masonry, and you'll see the original logs. Some of them quite large. They had to be hauled from up to 25 miles away, or even greater. Over 100 miles away, some of them. Again, tilt down, look around, and to see one of the storage bins. Some of these walls have rubble in the middle, though not too many in this one. And that shoring up, that was done, I think, in this century, or the last century. But you can see where the second floor is with all those holes. Those were posts to hold the second story. There was actually a trading post here in the early 1900s, and that little sign there says there's a marker for the funeral or for the cemetery of that old trading post. And obviously they don't want you walking near that fragile wall. Again, check out the wall, see how it's tapered as it goes up higher. And now, or this is the oldest part of Pueblo Bonito. This was the first section that was built around 850. It was added on to throughout the years. Also, a little smudge you see in the video, well, that's when I dropped my new expensive toy and scratched the lens covers. So from now on, you're going to see what happens when you drop something made of glass and destroy the image. So its first shoot, it's already been broken. I have since replaced those covers. In all these little rooms were probably for storage. Throughout the park, there's both excavated and non-excavated structures here. Most of these, I think, have been. Now we're going to a great kiva. These are the ceremonial areas, the big circle pits, circles. Those were mainly for family members or for where particular rites took place. Some of them have benches in them. Others, as we'll see in a second, have little chambers in them where they might have been fire pits. They also might have been places for people to hide and to jump out of later. And if you're really curious about what these look like in their day, the kivas I'm talking about, go to Aztec, New Mexico, Aztec National Monument, where I've been, and it's on my channel. You can find the Native American sites video I've got, and we go into a refurbished kiva in Aztec. This, of course, is the Great Plaza where all the ceremonies took place. There were shops and trading and all kinds of things you can imagine here of a city. Inside, while they're excavating, they found macaws from Mexico. They found chocolate from Mexico, pottery from all over. Very little of the pottery is actually made here. It's made from all over and brought to Pueblo Bonito. And there's those little chambers I was talking about on the bottom. And all the little holes on the side, there's little niches. Not sure if they know what those are for. You can see them again in my other video on Aztec. When you're done looking at the kiva, spin around to look across the valley. That's where they planted their crops. A stream runs down the middle of it, and they built canals to water the crops. One of the canals flowed right past this wall. And just beyond it, during a 1990s excavation, they found a midden, which is a fancy word for trash pile. Again, you can see the masonry work is pretty good. There's mud mortar in most of these. And some of those, you can see some of those are reconstructed. And these walls here at the end, they think these were all grain storage areas. And I think that because, well, there's no real doors to get in them. Now you can see all the doors or windows here. And some of them have little slats inside where they think that they had boards pressed against them to act as doors for grain storage. The T doors, as we see here, that one that looks like a little key, a little bigger on the top and smaller on the bottom, that's called a T door. And those are all over the Southwest, in Mesoamerica as well. And I think those were used mainly for people, while the other doors that aren't T doors are for storage or for windows. This was a common design that was also used on pottery and some other artwork. So it may have had some more significance than just a simple door design. Again, that's original lumber you see there in the door. The quarry isn't far away, it's about a mile away. Of course, they had no metal tools. So you may wonder how they cut down a tree with a stone tool. Well, not very easily. But they could use the sandstone to sand off the edges to make them flat. Well, we're about to end our walk around Chaco Canyon's Pueblo Bonito. But enough people are interested, I will post another video where I walk through several of the interior rooms with the same 360 camera. So let me know in the comments if you're interested, and I'll put in the time to make that one available. I'm working on a full-blown tour of Big Bend National Park, and I'm going to be updating the Utah Mighty 5 video soon as well.